Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is Game 8 from the 2014 World Chess Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Viswanathan Anand. Going into this game, Carlsen has a 4-3 lead over Anand, and Anand with the white pieces in this one. He opened with d4. He has yet to change it up, starting all games with the d4. And we follow Game 3, this Game 8 here. We follow Game 3 all the way up to move 6. In move 6 in Game 3, we had knight b to d7, but in this Game 8, we now have c5, creating some more central tension. And whenever I see this type of tension between the c and d pawns, I'm immediately drawn to certain structures, thinking about capturing and then capturing here. That would be a way to saddle black with an isolated d pawn. And also this here, if white is to make some move, black has the option of saddling white with an isolated d pawn. In this game here, neither occur. Neither side is saddled with an isolated queen pawn. These guys are all exchanged, and the c and d files are completely opened. What follows is move 7, d takes c, bishop takes. And now this tension will remain for some time. Black does not want to take on the c4 square until this bishop has moved, and, well, this bishop doesn't want to move so fast. White wants to make some more useful moves, keeping this tension in the position. a3 first. There might be an idea of expanding on the queen side with b4. This will also watch out for any knight hop into the b4 square. We'll see how this is useful. After knight c6, we have queen c2. The queen is much more secure now on this post. Rook to e8, preparing to have the rook activated should white go ahead and follow through with this capture. The rook is brought right to life, so white will not be so quick to make this capture. Instead, bishop to g5, moving the same piece twice. I guess we could say one of the chess principles has been violated with that move, but is that really so significant in this position? I'm not so sure. The idea with this is to indirectly put some pressure on the d5 pawn. Two pieces are hitting it. This knight is no longer going to be around to lend support to d5, and what's right around the corner is additional pressure on the d5 pawn as well. Now, in this game, we had the bishop g5 move, this pinning move, simply broken immediately with bishop e7. Another try could have been d4, and after d4 there could be queenside castle, e5, knight d5, bishop back. We could have this line here where at the end of it we have white being up a pawn, but black is very, very active, hitting the rook, hitting the bishop. The short story in this position here is that while white is up a pawn, black will have very active pieces. As an example, the bishop on b7 is excellent. The queen is very well placed, and if we do a king comparison, the black king is more secure. We can expect rook to c8. White will need some time to bring the king over here. So while white is up a pawn in this variation, black has really well-placed pieces and a safer king. This is not a direction we went in. This was an option, however, to play d4, but instead it was the much more calm, reserved approach to simply break the pin. And we have a similar situation going on with the next move. After white's rook to d1, pinning the pawn, black is quick to get out of that pin as well with queen a5, bishop to d3, and now h6. There was a threat here to take the knight and then grab that pawn with check, so h6 is quite convenient. Getting that move back, throwing a punch at the bishop, meeting the threat on h7. He has to react, backs up to h4. Notice, well, if you capture the knight, you're giving up the bishop pair, and the alternative square of going to f4, that does run into e5. Black can expand. It doesn't seem initially, at least, that the e5 pawn is protected enough, but it is, because we have this idea here where d takes c, throws a punch at both bishops. So the better reaction is bishop h4, the move played in the game. And now d takes c, bishop takes, and a6. Black simply needs to get this bishop developed. a6 is a step in that direction, looking to play b5 with tempo, and then bishop to b7. Castles, b5 is in, bishop to a2. During the live stream of this, when I was live streaming this game, I had questioned what are some differences between these two squares. For one, if he's going to b3 instead of the move played in the game, a2, you'll notice he's more accessible to a knight, let's say, at some stage. And when he's on a2, he has other ideas in mind, namely to come to this diagonal, something we do see show up in this game. After bishop b7, it's bishop to b1, looking to eliminate the knight and enter on h7, and black's reply is to simply contest the open file. There isn't much fear of this h7 square. It may appear a bit scary, but it really isn't. After rook on a to d8, we have in fact bishop takes knight, bishop takes bishop, and not queen to h7, instead knight e4. Why was queen h7 not played? Let's have a look at this. Queen h7, king f8. If another check is thrown in, well, the king is perfectly tucked in on e7, throws a punch right back at the queen. There really wouldn't be much point in playing to the h8 square, at least at this stage. And I think she's really just out of play. The bishop is an excellent defender of the black kingside structure, and again, this is a wonderful home, perfectly good home on e7. If the queen gives the check and king f8 is played, what can be tried is knight e4, and this bishop seems like he could grab this pawn, but there would be now knight to d6, and this indeed would be uncomfortable for the black side. Knight d6 hits the bishop, hits the rook. If you don't move the rook, you're going to lose the rook, and if you do move the rook, well, now, of course, this is effective. That's a mate. So what black could do, if we did have this variation with queen check, king f8, and now knight e4, there is the simple rook takes on d, rook takes rook, and now rook to d8. There is no knight takes bishop with check here. The rook is unprotected. White needs to do something about that. On rook takes rook, there is queen takes, and on knight takes bishop, well, that would actually drop mate. So this would be a way, in other words, to meet this ensuing knight to e4 move. To play, simply rook takes rook, and rook to d8. On rook takes rook, queen takes, and now we would have basically the queens come off. Knight takes, and it's a completely equal position. Knight takes bishop, king takes. We're tending towards a draw in that line. This was not played in the game. Instead, knight e4 directly, hitting the bishop, and looking at that c5 square. It's a very important square. I've highlighted many times a white knight getting to f5. That is very inconvenient to the black king side of the board. This f5 square is inconvenient to the king side of the board, and with regard to the queen side of the board, the one square that is inconvenient to the black side is c5, and that's where the knight is heading. Bishop is there to control that square, and now as soon as the knight moves, he needs to go. He's hitting the bishop, and the main threat is that this is a mate in 2 threat. The bishop needs to move so that the king can quickly run to e7. The knight is gone. Queen recaptures. She's the one piece in the black position, and black is quick to get rid of her with b4, offering a queen exchange. Rook c1, b takes a, queen takes queen. Something other than this rook to c1 move. Suppose queen takes queen, knight takes queen was played, and then a takes b. There can follow knight c6. I believe that this would be fine. And another one is knight to c4, putting some pressure on the b2 pawn. If b3 is played, there can follow bishop takes f3, This is a little bit complicated, but at the end this knight is very active. G takes f3 and knight to d2. This would be a way to get that pawn back, but we don't have that. Instead it is rook c1 at this stage. B takes A, B takes A. The queens are off. This is the new piece that's in the black position, and so black addresses that. The knight e7, looking to contest the rook with rook c8. White doubles. c5, rook is challenged. A lot of exchanges here. It's quite typical when there are few, well, there are 3 open files in this case, but it's likely in this position that both sets of rooks are exchanged, and they are indeed exchanged in this one. After bishop d3, that's just a slight improvement of the bishop's position. Rook to d8. Both sets of rooks are exchanged. The knight recaptures, and now the one concern on the black side is a knight yet again trying to arrive on the c5 square. We have first knight d2, not getting the kings involved just yet. There is this small battle going on between the knights with these next few moves. The white knight looking to get to c5, and it'd be all the more appealing since it comes with tempo on the bishop and adds an additional threat or an additional attacker against the a6 pawn. But black is there with knight b6 and on knight b3, knight d7, just in time to make sure that great square is watched over by the black knight. Now is the time to get the kings working. After knight a5, bishop back, the kings get rolling. Towards the center, we have a knight move inserted. The bishop simply tucks back here, restricting the knight. King c5, this is a strong, well, it appears that it's a strong king position, but he can be kicked back. Knight b3 is one way to do it, and, well, we see another approach as well. The move played in the game here, f4, kicks the knight back to c6. The knights are now exchanged. This position has simplified quite a bit. No longer knights around, no longer so much calculation needed. King position immediately. If any player is the preferred side here, it is white. King d4, f6, and the try here for black is to try and get a quick king d6 and then e5 in, but white is not going to allow that. First it's e4, and on king d6, e5, this pawn is now going to be fixed on this light square and is a potential target one day for the bishop. However, after this move e5, it is at this point that both players agreed to a draw. Having this pawn fixed on a light square will not be enough to press for a win in this position. The players again agreed to a draw at this point after this e5 advance. On f takes e, king c6. Notice how these squares are covered, and the black king will be responsible for covering the dark square. He can always move back and forth here. If there's a check thrown in, king here, let's say that white keeps their pawns on all these dark squares. How exactly to make progress? Even if the bishop comes back to this point, this guy could just go back and forth. And again, there's this giant wall here. Where exactly does this king make progress and put himself in a position to even attack any of the black pawns? How do you get at this base point, for example? There's just not a way to make progress in this final position here. Having one pawn fixed on a light square as a potential target for this guy is just not going to be enough to press for some type of a win. So after this, again, the players agree to a draw, and this gets pushed to game 9, of course. Tomorrow's a rest day. The point system, or the point total for both sides at this stage, is Carlsen 4.5 and Anand 3.5. Again, we are racing to 6.5 to determine a champion. So we'll see what happens in game 9, and as always, I hope you got something out of this video. Take care.